What I want to do here before we get started too deeply is I want to switch in. I want to walk through for just a moment and give a little bit of recognition to some of our sponsors. Oh, that's not Jason Brett that you see on your screen. That's Steve Youngblood, who's our speaker for today, because I'm twisting around with cameras to manage our technical difficulties. But I do want to thank our sponsors. So Product Coffee is a free event. And we do this almost every week. We've taken a few weeks off as we're kind of wrapping up the summer and getting geared up for the fall. But we do this almost every week. And it's a virtual online networking event in the spirit of Product Camp. And for those of you who have never been to a product camp, the idea is we come together as product professionals and talk about the things that are on our mind on any given day. And that has had a huge impact on the product management community worldwide. And we want to continue doing that, but with the pandemic, we've had to make some changes and pivot into a different way of thinking about things. So we set up Product Coffee last year to continue that tradition, get us together in a virtual manner so that we could share ideas in the way we always have. We couldn't do it without the support of some great companies who have been there from the very beginning of Product Coffee and Product Camp to help make this a reality. It takes a lot of equipment that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, and software and streaming services and so on and so forth. So I want to thank Method, who is one of our key sponsors, has really jumped in and supported us in all kinds of ways, both on the books and off the books, to help Product Coffee grow and be successful, as well as Pragmatic Institute, who's the leading trainer and certifier of product management professionals worldwide. They've been doing it longer than anyone else as well. They've been so successful at it, as a matter of fact, now that Carnegie Mellon University has decided, well, maybe we need a product management degree offering. And that's coming on the backs of the great foundation that Pragmatic Institute and grassroots groups like Product Camp have inspired. And of course, Feature Upvote facilitates our voting system. So if you have a topic that you'd like to hear about or have us discuss at Product Coffee, you can go to productcoffee.com/ideas and enter your suggestion or vote on the suggestions that are already there. And as ideas rise to the top, we take those off the shelf and we bring in speakers to talk about them. And today's session is no different from that, as a matter of fact. Feature Upvote provides us that software, so check them out. It's great. It's a great software for collecting feedback from your customers, getting good voice of the customer information. So check that out. Today's session came from our from our suggestion board as well. We had a suggestion from Steve Youngblood to talk about ideation for an MVP and how to define a new product like a jigsaw puzzle. And Steve's an avid jigsaw puzzler, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute as well. But and he's got a methodology that he uses for defining an MVP that uses a jigsaw puzzle as a metaphor. And he's going to talk a little bit about that in helping size and pick the right boundaries and fill in all the pieces that you need to deliver a meaningful MVP. So with that, I am going to turn the camera over to Steve Youngblood, who is now on your screen with my name under him. And we're going to let him take it away from a presentation perspective.
Thanks a lot, Jason. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my other camera down on the puzzle. We'll get to that in a few minutes. So I'm going to be looking at, just as we spoke about earlier, I'm going to look at the room, the folks we have here, and as well, I'll try to keep looking at the camera for the folks that we have everywhere. But this whole idea of using the jigsaw puzzle as a way to practice and train your brain to do an MVP came about, well, because of the lockdowns that we had early last year. I've been married 35 years. Kids are out of the house. My wife and I were stuck at home. She had just opened a museum. If you guys haven't been to the Computer Museum of America, it's really the second largest computer museum in the US, located in Roswell, Georgia. Well, guess what? They couldn't really do anything. So here we are at home trying to figure out things to do, try to have a little bit of fun. And we went back down to just some old school fun and started pulling out puzzles. And now I've been in product management for almost 32 years. So I know I hate to admit it, but wasn't always in this area. For 6 years, I thought I was a financial analyst, and I learned quite quickly that I wasn't. Yes, I could do it. No, I didn't like it. So I ended up getting my graduate degree at the end of 1989. We moved to Atlanta, or Alpharetta to be exact, and I've been doing this ever since. Luckily, I had technical background, wrote code, and said there's got to be more than just writing the code. I want to hang out with the guys who actually turn it into something that people buy and do something with. And so that's how I got into product management. And of course, you guys have seen what we've been through for the last 30 years, right? Moving more towards an agile type development environment. The internet really helped push that. And that's all great. But sometimes we forget to train our brains to think and to prepare. And a lot of people don't really build roadmaps or think outside the box or take a walk in the wild. By the way, at Product Camp, I've taught for years how to mix art and science together, how to get out and take a walk on the wild side. That is, you're trying to think about building your new product, go for a hike. What? How do those things relate? Well, they do relate because it trains you to start thinking, stay on the path. How do we get from here to there? And so this really came about. My wife and I were doing the puzzles. I said, wait a minute, let's work out the best way to put these puzzles together. Luckily, my sister lives here in town. She works for Adobe. And so she and I started swapping puzzles back and forth. How quickly could we do these large puzzles, 500 pieces, 1,000 pieces, 2,000 pieces? And at some point I said, called my sister Mary, and I said, hey, let me tell you my methodology. She goes, oh my gosh, that's mine too. And I started realizing there was this great overlap with what I do for a living. So since we can't go out and do our corporate training events right now, we're all kind of stuck inside. I've been creating my own corporate training events, things I can do that are fun, that sort of help inspire and do things. And so now actually I have other people going, oh my gosh, I'm doing that now too. And it's not just these. I've actually had friends in the past where we went out and created products from scratch. Let's build an Alexa, an Amazon Echo out of a Raspberry Pi. It's kits. It's putting things together, trying to follow the instructions. In some cases, don't follow the instructions. But a little bit more about myself right now. I'm the head of product at a company called FuelTrust. We're tracking maritime fuel around the globe. I'm one of the founders of the company. I also now am the product guy for a company called SimTrain, Simulated Training. We're up in Alpharetta. The other companies out of Houston, really, we're global. I also help another company out in California defining an MVP for an engagement product. And also as well, too, I'm the EVP of product for a company here in Atlanta called Blink Sky Digital Gift Card Platform. So yes, I'm doing a lot of things right now. But actually, that's where this virtual world has helped us. We can do multiple things at the same time. And in some cases, I do have 3 computers going at the same time, clicking over here, speaking over here. I'm not doing that right now, by the way. So, but now, Jason, if you could put on the presentation, I'll give you guys a brief walkthrough of where this methodology works for helping you think to build an MVP and where it doesn't for greater product management. So let me know when that's on the screen, and I'll look up here on my phone. And as soon as we finish with the prezo, I'll turn this down to the puzzle pieces and sort of show you sort of the steps I go through to solve a puzzle and where it really has a lot of overlap with what you might do thinking to build something new from scratch. And by the way, it doesn't have to just be software. It could be anything, any type of business, any type of product, any type of effort. So there you go. So you'll see that right there. I think on the first screen, we'll share this presentation out. It's a PDF. On the first screen, I just had the jumble of puzzle pieces like you see, like I showed you a few minutes ago. And the first step obviously is organization. So, how does putting together a jigsaw puzzle relate to building an MVP for your product? Well, the first thing is it's organizing things out of the chaos. When you first open a jigsaw puzzle, what you see is, I don't know if you guys can see here on the camera, but you've got lots of things. And by the way, I don't want to lose these because I will give it to another family member. Some of them are upside down, some of them are stuck together, some of them look alike, some of them don't. Some of them are key pieces, some of them might just be a piece of the sky. I don't know if you guys can see this, but luckily some puzzles actually have a map, so they actually give you some details, some don't. But you can just see there's some things that are easy, some things that are hard. So what I like about using a jigsaw puzzle, it's really a practice in taking chaos and building order out of it, and then trying to figure out what works and how can I make this thing whole quickly. So just a minute, guys. So why jigsaw puzzle? So I mentioned this a few minutes, lots of pieces. So when you guys go to build a software product for the first time and someone says, here's what we're going to do, you're thinking, okay, there's a lot, I could go in any type of direction. And if you're like a lot of us, we are both structured and unstructured. I tend to go toward the unstructured side. So if there's a squirrel going by, yes, I go towards it. That's you as well too. Me too. So there's lots of pieces. The layouts can be difficult. The life can be difficult. What you're trying to solve can be difficult. So that's what's nice about a puzzle too. They can be difficult. And I typically go after the ones that have lots of shading. In this case, I brought one along that has birds on it. And they have lots of variations in their colors, on their feathers. The sky can look different. It's difficult. The related items can't always be easily found. I'm trying to read my own writing on there. Related items are hard to find, right? To put them together. These things are small. And if you get the better puzzles, they have lots of varied pieces and layouts. There's actually a company here in Atlanta called Mosaic Puzzles that makes them out of wood. And some of the puzzle pieces are shaped like palm trees. And you get that kind of varied amount of pieces. It's hard to figure out how to put them together. And then I'm trying to read my own handwriting here. Or the own. So anyway, and it's just like life. Life's like that as well too. This is actually a lot like what we do in software. Interesting right now, I've got I'm working with a group up in Alpharetta where the developers are in India and Russia and the US, right? So it's difficult, it's varied, there's lots of pieces. You've got a CEO who wants to go one way. You got the chief technology officer who's already saying, gosh, we built it all wrong in V1. V2 is going to be a different architecture. And you're thinking, gosh, I just want this thing to look great and sell well. So again, it can be quite difficult and there's lots of pieces and it's hard to figure out where to start. And by the way, I'm going to pull my camera out. Very helpful. Very good. So why else does solving a jigsaw puzzle work like creating innovation? We're basically trying to create a finished product. That's really the goal, is to come out with something that is well-defined, that has borders, that tells a pretty succinct story. By the way, that's a hard thing in life when you're out trying to build an MVP and everybody says, no, we want to boil the ocean. No, it just has to do this one thing. And you and I know that it has to do something that will meet a basic expectation to prove out your market, to know that you can ask for investment to go forward. That's really a lot what these puzzles are. They are very well defined. They tell us a succinct story. In this case, I brought one. We like the wildlife one, so this one tells a nice story of birds at a lake. So it tells a very succinct story, and that's really what a lot of your product building is all about. Each piece of the puzzle represents some sort of an existing technology or some existing part of the puzzle. You can see here I've got parts of a lake, parts of geese, parts of a straw area where a bald eagle's on. Again, they're all telling that kind of story. And also putting together the puzzle is ideal for starting the process of innovation. And what I mean by that is, how am I going to solve this? And so I'll get to that in a few minutes when I actually show that you do it. But the first thing I will do, I'll give you a tip off. Look for the edges. What are my boundaries? Where do I not go outside of? How do I start enclosing this? Think about when you're building a product, when you're saying, okay, we're not going to put it on this browser, or we're not going to support JavaScript in this manner, or we're not going to go after this market. It's just going to be this. So that's, again, putting the puzzle together is also, you start with creating your boundaries. So, but there are longer term differences where putting a puzzle together is not like building a product. Great for an MVP, great to help your mind think that way, but not necessarily good if you're thinking about the long term. Typically, you put a puzzle together by yourself. Although I will say my wife and I take turns. We'll go in, she'll get a cup of coffee and go in, and I'll see her fiddling around. Then she gets bored of it and goes, this thing's too hard. The next thing you know, it's me going in there doing it. So, but it's really a one-person type of thing, whereas building a software product really involves lots of people, lots of diverse thought. It involves, especially as you're taking it to thinking about your V2 and V3 and market growth. So that's where they start to change a little bit. After your puzzle is finished, you put it away. You're done. You typically won't do it again. I've already done this one. I'm actually looking at it going, no, it was fun when I did it, but now I need to hand it to somebody else. Whereas your product, you live with it, you own it, and it's got a life of its own. So you have to really think about the puzzle as being something that trains your brain for this first step. And then a new technology becomes a potential component in future technologies, whereas each one of these components is really just good for this one-time use. So you have to really think about this being something that trains you to start. And I don't know if you guys, those that have been to Product Camp in the past, we all talk a lot about starting, and I've talked about Guy Kawasaki's The Art of the Start. That's really what a puzzle is all about, is helping you get into a mode of starting something. And believe it or not, that's one of the hardest things that people can do out there, is actually to get started. I don't know how many times I know procrastination, because even though I love to get up and get going, man, I am so good at practicing. I'll look at it later. I'll think of, no, this is actually a good, when you dump that box over and you've just committed your dining room table to this puzzle, your wife's going, hey, Thanksgiving's around the corner. You better pick up the pace a little. And by the way, this past Christmas was exactly that way. Pick up the pace, we got people coming in. But a few more differences. Again, we talked about groups of people coming together, assembling the puzzle, not just thinking of how to do it, but assembling it, doing it. The puzzle has a front cover. So I actually know what this thing's going to look like. If it's not on this map like this, it's on the box. So I know what the answer is. Whereas starting your product is, you don't necessarily know what the answer is. Not to mention that after you've put it together, things may or may not work. I'm going through that right now, where I thought my next 2 sprints were new features in one of my products. It's the bug fixing. So whereas with this, pretty much I know where I'm going. The puzzle has the exact number of pieces, right? Whereas in your software product or any other product, there could be variations that come about in your MVP of how you might do it. That means instead of this big, it might be this big or this big. And what it takes to finish it could be different. And in puzzle building, the shapes of the pieces are fixed. Everyone in this puzzle piece is set. Whereas the way to do it in software or any other product could change, still with the same outcome, but perhaps with different components that look a little bit different. Go on, Jason, next one. But without an MVP, there is no product. Getting started is the key to building the long term. So what I thought I'd do now is actually shift over and show you how I sort of use a puzzle methodology, or I use a puzzle thought to actually put together MVPs. And by the way, I've just done 3 or 4 MVPs just in the last 6 months for other companies. So sometimes when I'm bored and trying to train my brain, I'll go in and do this. Sometimes I have a cup of coffee. Sometimes I have a glass of wine. But it's relaxing, it's fun, but it's also challenging. So if you guys haven't done it, it's not just for kids and it's not just for nerds. I've actually had friends come over who think they're very cool, even my own kids, who go, wow, Daddy, what are you working on? And they'll jump in. So if you haven't done this in a while, and trust me, you don't have to tell anybody you've done it. No one will know you're a nerd, but give it a try. So now what I'd like to do is I'm going to turn my phone, Jason, down to point. You can see me here and I'll show things up, but I'll also point down to the puzzle so that you can see things. By the way, quick question. People here, everybody in product management? I don't know if I can see online. Not directly. Marketing. Marketing's good too. I mean, that's still the same type of thought process. By the way, it used to be 30 years ago, product management sat in marketing departments.
That's kind of what we do. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. You did both product marketing and product management. So we sat in that realm. But today they sort of split it out. But in smaller companies, you still are doing both. So let me turn my camera around. All right. Everybody see that? Fantastic. So some of the first things I do, I mentioned looking at the corners. So you'll notice here I've got a list of these items. Can everybody see that online? So everything has a nice edge. Luckily, puzzles are typically rectangular or square. Now, of course, there's some wild ones out there that are crazy shapes, but typically they're square. And even if they were circular, you've got an edge. So those are your boundaries. And so the first thing I do is, the first thing I do is I turn all of these over just so they're seen. So think about when you're doing discovery. You want to find out everything there is to be known about your market, the people that might buy your products, market fit, then the technologies, competition. Turning the puzzle pieces over so you can see everything is key. Spread it out on the table. Make sure you can see everything. If you have a cat, I'm just going to let you know that cats are amazed at what you're doing up there, and they will jump off and they'll either bite them or they'll knock them off, because I know I've already been through that. The other thing to do is I also like to find, what really makes me happy is to find an edge piece that's a corner. So again, not only your boundaries, but your hard boundaries, your 4 corners. So think about people who travel, who look at the compass, north, south, east, and west. I like to find those 4 corners. So not only to find the edges, but once you find those, it's much like the builder who's looking for his cornerstone, or if you're building an arch, it's the keystone. These are your hard corners. So look for all those, put them together. Luckily, you can then start to group those as well too. So organization of things that look alike are next. So you've got your corners here. You want to find those where they look alike so you can build out your edge. The next step is to find things that look alike. You'll notice over here, I've got things that look like straw. You can't see them on the page, but you can see here that looks like they have straw. And if you look at my map, there's a lot of things in here that show where there's straw. So again, those show me that those are key components of the puzzle. They look alike. I can probably find enough that look together to start figuring out how they match together. So again, start putting those together. And so you'll notice I have other ones over here that represent water. So I've got blue pieces together. Here's a key piece of the puzzle, which are birds. So I've got bird pieces. I don't know if you guys can see that online there, but key pieces that look like birds. And so that's the next thing. So I start putting those together. Before I know it, I've got multiple clumps. I've got an outline. And then you start really putting them together. Can it be hard? Yes. But then you start putting them together. So think about your software application where you know you've got your UI. And you know within your UI, you've got administration. You've got the user view, you've got administrative view. You start having these key components that go in them. You start to see the things that look alike and you put them together. So I don't know, does anybody here do mock-ups? I'm sure everybody does. So I'm a mock-up king, right? So I start creating my mock-up areas. In the software world, we use things like Figma and Just in Mind. And if you like Balsamic, which if you like the sketchy kind of look. By the way, I also do them on sheets of paper. I recently did a product where before I ever put it into Figma, I drew about 70 sheets of paper and I blanketed one of the rooms in my basement and then pulled them all down, scanned them, shipped it off to a designer. And then I started working with him to put together some of the screens before they went off to be cut and then analyzed. So I do the same thing here in the puzzle. I'm actually putting together key components. In this case, I've got ocean or water. I've got birds. I've got different kinds of birds, geese, ducks, loons, an eagle. By the way, part of this too is when you start doing the puzzles, I'm amazed at the artistry in some of these things. So it reminds me when I'm putting together my components in my software product, I want it to look great. I mean, these people have taken the time to give me something that's visually attractive. By the way, we've done Van Gogh puzzles. I don't know if you guys did the Van Gogh exhibit here in Atlanta. That's pretty amazing. If you haven't done it, it's really cool. Really cool. So artistry. Don't forget, these things are also artistry. So it reminds you as you're doing the puzzle, this thing looks great. I want my software to look great too. By the way, I know we're saying software. People here build other products other than software. So then the next piece is integration. So now that I've got my birds put together, I've got my water put together, I've got my edges, now I want to start tying them together. There's no better feeling than when you've built out a big corner over here, or you've got the bottom done. So I don't know if you guys can see that here, but when I did this puzzle, I did obviously the corners, but at some point I wanted to build out this straw bed here and the straw bed here, then the loon, because they had a lot of wing here that I could really make seen and people could know it. The bald eagle head, you know, just because it's visible and it has a beak and you can see the eyes. By the way, eyes, key component here. The birds all had eyes, so I started looking for anything that had eyes on them. Where could that helped me put together my componentry pieces. And then once I've got them all together and you've got a lot of these pieces, you start integrating. How can I tie these things together? It's the same thing in product management, right? You've defined your key subcomponents of your application. Now, how do I build a user journey through my product? How do people actually use it and go through it and end? I'm doing that right now with the product up in Alpharetta, where the customer's going through, they're practicing their simulation for training, and then how do they end it? And how do they know when they've ended it, they go right to then view their simulation? This is really a product for call center people or anybody in customer service where they're trying to train on simulated conversations that might even have an application flow in it. And for them to actually go through and do a simulation and then see their results, there's a flow to it. And it's kind of the same thing here, right? You're actually building the integration of the pieces together. So ultimately the eye starts seeing how it flows through. And then it gets to the very end, right? It's all in the details. You finished up, you got a bunch of pieces over here and you're going, I cannot figure out where those things go. Honestly, it gets down into, and I'll tell you, you guys are gonna laugh at this. I start finding pieces. I don't know if you guys can see this online. See this one piece? I'll try to get it close. See how there's those little corners, they look like spades? I don't know if you play cards, but there's the little piece that looks like a spade. I actually start looking for the pieces that have spades on them, and I start putting them aside. And there's different shapes to those spades. Some are very uniform, and some are oblong like that. And I start putting the oblong ones together because I'm looking for missing pieces that then I can say, oh my gosh, look at that. It has the matching piece, and it has the same coloring that should sit in that area. Recently, I did a Star Wars puzzle. And as you can imagine, in a Star Wars puzzle, there's a big, vast amount of space with a lot of dotted stars. Now, it's great. It's easy to find Luke and Leia and Chewbacca and R2-D2 and all those guys, right? Because they're familiar faces. But how do you, and the planets, but how the heck do you find a bunch of stars that way? So think about it in your software application too. When you're trying to, at the end, you're trying to say what's missing. What are we not talking about? What is hard to find? And so you start looking for those nuances. So again, am I saying this is software building? No, I'm saying this is good training of your brain to start looking for things and looking deeply. My wife and I like to go hiking. And what's the first rule they tell you when you go hiking? Well, first they say the only thing you take out of your tracks, the only thing you leave are your tracks. The second thing they say is don't get off the trail. And what's the first thing people do? They get off the trail, which my wife and I tend to do. We recently were hiking up somewhere in North Georgia. We'd gotten off the trail. We thought we were following, but we're doing the squirrel bit, right? Look, over there, over there. The next thing we knew, it's like, where did we come from? I don't remember. We tracked back, and I remembered seeing certain little things as I was looking on the ground. I said, oh, look at that mushroom over there on that log. She's going, there's a bunch of mushrooms on logs. I'm like, no, that one looks specific. And sure enough, it was that one catch that helped us get on the path and get out. And so again, part of doing a puzzle is looking for these, picking some of these odd shapes. And in this case, this one has lots of neat shapes like these little spades, and some are uniform, some are oblong. Some of them I start looking and saying, okay, this is one that has three holes and a peg. See that one? I don't know if you guys can see that online. 3 holes and a peg. And then there's some that have 3 pegs and a hole. So I start looking for those patterns. And again, when you're at the end, you're looking for those minute pieces. What should I be putting in my software? What components are people asking about? What seems to be something that's not making this thing work? There's data that tells you that it's not working. And then there's just that gut that tells you, hey, this doesn't feel right. Typically, that gut that tells you it's not working right is that hypothesis you need to have so you can go test it with data. Same thing here. I start thinking, I'm not doing this right. Something doesn't feel right. Let me find another way to organize, sort, segregate. Think about segmenting your market. That's a lot of what we were doing here is segmenting your market. Sorting, that's also putting pieces off in different areas. And ultimately, once you've got them into organizations, bringing them together to make what is essentially a finished product or your finished puzzle. So again, not necessarily a metaphor for building software products ongoing, but definitely a great metaphor for getting something started and completing it and being able to see, aha, it looks good. It seems to match what people were asking for. In this case, what the author asked me to build for the puzzle. And just not to mention the fact that during these COVID times where we're still hybrid in and out and you're looking for something to do and you're bored at home, this is a great thing to do. It's something you can do with a friend or a kid or your spouse. And it's just fun. And by the way, I'm about to turn 60. So 60-year-olds don't go out to the clubs much anymore. So we like to find things to do like that. So if you ever, you guys could.
Apparently, Steve, you haven't seen Johnny's Hideaway.
I've been there one time, and there are some old people in there. By the way, you'll also know too when you get older and you start calling everybody else older, and everybody goes, "Daddy, you're 60." I'm like, shh. But no, it's a great thing to do. And what I found in my product management world, there's a lot of things I do to help me get inspired. I'm a musician. So in my basement, I have saxophones and guitars and basses. And I like to sometimes just sit around and play my guitar. Other times we'll go up and put together puzzles or do things like that. And especially in COVID times, it's been harder to get out and do things amongst other people. So we've been finding alternatives. And what I found is this is a great way to fill a little bit of time. And it's a fulfilling way to solve a problem. And so if anybody has any questions, you can reach me at my personal email address, newbrew@gmail.com. Yes, newbrew.com is my domain. steve@newbrew.com as well. Yeah, part of what I love product management, love building new products, love seeing them through into latter phases of the products, but really love ideation, new thoughts, solving problems, and hopefully making the world a better place because we've helped people do more things with what we have. But anyway, appreciate Jason you having me on, and hopefully I can get a chance to present something like this at Product Camp Live very soon.
Yep, absolutely.
So thank you.
So I'm gonna switch the camera around here for just a moment and thank Steve. We got a few things that we're going to do here. First of all, before we switch over to the activity, let me ask if anyone has got the if anyone on the Zoom call has any questions or comments they'd like to throw in there before we switch into the activity. Any questions for Steve? Throw your hand up, and as I go into the next few minutes, if you have if you do have a question or a comment, use the reactions panel, throw your hand up, and I will pull it out and call on you. And the same thing for anybody here in the room. We'll repeat the questions for online. Any questions or comments in the room here? We all good? Okay. So we've got an activity. We try to always do a little workshop activity here at Product Coffee whenever we can. And this one's going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. Instead of a worksheet or a business process, Steve actually brought a puzzle for us to put hands on. And so we're going to, here in the room, we're going to get up and put some pieces together on the puzzle while we talk and network and get to know each other a little bit. And for those of you who are in the Zoom call, we've also got a puzzle, and I'm going to paste the link in here. It is in the chat, and I'll also put it on the resources page at productcoffee.com/resources here in a few minutes as well, and it'll be there for you all day. You can log into jigsawpuzzles.io using this link, and there's an online puzzle that you can work together. I'm also going to break us off into some smaller groups. There are about 30 people still online in the breakout in the Zoom call. So I'm going to break you off into groups of about 6 or so. And as folks have to leave and go to meetings or get on calls, if your room starts to dwindle down, just come back out to the main room. We'll keep it open until about 9 o'clock. We're not going to do a come back together and chat as a group like we often do. This is just going to be some time to chat with your fellow product people, get to know each other a little bit, and work a puzzle together and talk about today's session and some of the takeaways that you had from today's session, and just have a little bit of fun with it. You will get a survey via email. You'll be asked to complete a survey. You can also go to the resources page at productcoffee.com/resources and click on the survey link there. And please fill that out before the end of the day. We use that for, we take that feedback and we put it to use for planning our future sessions. We'll share the feedback with Steve as well, because, this is a session he created and would like to, as he mentioned, like to redo it in some more live events. So any feedback that you have for Steve, the things that you liked or things that you'd consider adding, let him know those things as well. And we'll share that with him as well. So Kurt, we do not have a 3D puzzle, but that would be awesome. That is pretty awesome. I've never done one of those. I remember in the 80s, there was a puzzle that you could get at Spencer's Gifts. And I think that store is still around in the 3 or 4 malls that are still open in the world. But there was a puzzle called Purple Madness. And it was like a 1,500 piece puzzle, just purple and no edges. So anyway, and that was pretty crazy, and we gave up on it. We never finished it. But, okay, so I'm going to break us up into breakout rooms, and once again, in the chat is the link to the online Jigsaw puzzle. And I want to thank everybody for joining us at Product Coffee today. I see no hands up, so I will take you out to rooms. Looks like we're going to have about 5 rooms to start with. And enjoy yourselves, everybody. All right, the rooms are open, so you should be getting those invitations on your screen. And I'm going to also paste this link for those of you who are watching on YouTube. I'm going to paste this link into YouTube, and you can join the puzzle extravaganza and chat there in the puzzle application as well. And this will be online all day. So feel free to jump in and participate for those of you on YouTube as well, and say hello. I want to thank everybody for coming to Product Coffee today. I'm going to end the stream on YouTube. We're going to keep chatting here in the room and on Zoom until about 9 o'clock Eastern, and we will see you next time. Yeah, yes, Jay asked, is there a map? I assume you mean, is there a visual of the puzzle on the Jigsaw site? And yes, there is. If you look at the top of the screen, you will see a button that says preview, and it will show you the completed puzzle. So everybody have fun with that. And thanks a lot. Have a great day.